Hey neighbors, welcome to Wild Homestead Living Live. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Julie, and we're so excited to have you for our Homestead Hangout here at the end of July. We are so glad that you're joining us and have a big apology for anybody who tried to join us last month on YouTube. Do you want to explain what happened?
I wish I knew, actually. When we went and did the playback on it, we realized there was no sound at all. So if you tuned in, you probably just saw that instead of an actual talk with us. But I don't know what happened. Hopefully we tested today. We have new mics. Hopefully you can hear us now. If not, well,
we're sorry.
We're sorry. We're learning here as well.
We really are. Wild homestead living is a natural product, an outgrowing of our lives. And part of what we're doing and we love about homesteading and we learn from other people is that we're all figuring out as we go. And that is true for everything that we're doing in our own homesteading journey and what we're doing in trying to help you learn how to homestead too, using technology to connect with you wherever you are in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're finding it's a little easier for us to figure out like working with the plants and the soil than it is with the technology. But we're making progress. We're looking for progress over perfection.
Yes, that is our goal because, well, I was going to say both of us, but maybe I shouldn't speak for you. I consider myself a recovering perfectionist, and it's part of the wonderful thing about homesteading is that we're not in control of everything. And especially when it comes to gardening, we try our best and then we work with what nature brings us. In this case, it's technology. But we're hoping that if you are with us right now, you can actually hear us this time, or if you're watching it on replay later.
Absolutely.
So for those of you who maybe don't know us, I'm Julie.
And I'm Kevin.
And we are the people behind Wild Homestead Living. And just a little bit of brief about our story is that we have been together for 20 years. We met while we were working in a wildlife hospital, and we fell in love returning a bald eagle back to the wild. And that was 20 years ago. And in just a few days, we're actually going to be celebrating our 16th wedding anniversary. We came to this homestead. We bought it in 2018. It was always a dream that we had that seemed really far out of reach. We were getting ahead in our careers, living life of convenience in the city, and just couldn't figure out how to make that step into country living until after Kevin was diagnosed with some autoimmune issues and we started to get more serious about our healthy lifestyle. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015. And once we realized I was not going to die yet, we decided to find the courage to live our dream. Here we are a few years later, and we have found such joy and healing in this lifestyle that was really what prompted us to want to start Wild Homestead Living and to help other people to make that connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, did you want to add anything? Did I miss anything there?
Nope. I think you summed it up very well.
Okay. So if you're joining us, welcome. We would love to know where you're coming from. Oh, hey, Tracy, we're glad to have you here. Some of you may have known us for a really long time through our journey as wildlife rehabilitators or through our adventures with cats and history and mine hunting and exploring. We've had a lot of adventures.
We have had a lot of adventures. So met a lot of great folks along the way.
Yeah. And whether you're an old friend or you're brand new, we're so glad to have you here. We would love for you to drop in the chat where you're joining us from. We're in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State.
Oh, hello from Arkansas.
Hey, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. And newbies, welcome. This is an absolutely safe place to be a newbie. The beautiful thing about homesteading is even people who've been doing it a long time, we're all still learning.
Absolutely.
We learn so much from other people, whether you're new or not, with all the different perspectives. What is our motto?
There is no one right way to homestead.
Only the way that's right for you. And boy, howdy, have we found that to be true. So we are happy for everybody to be here. New friends, old friends, neighbors across the globe, welcome. I see fresh scat. I've gotten to the age where I need reading glasses. So
We both have one.
yeah. So thank you. We thought we'd cover maybe a little bit about what we've been up to. We started doing these live homestead hangouts after we did a year of monthly videos that were about our homestead. What we found is those were fun to do, but they were kind of a one-way street. And by doing lives, it's a chance for us to be more interactive. So Albany Mountain Homestead began their journey in 2016. So
Oh, wow.
right around the same time as us. And Tracy says that I was so excited when I found fresh scat in one of our videos.
Right.
Yes, this is a notorious thing that I'm known for. We're generally known for is we are wildlife nerds. We get excited when we find fresh scat. I think that was probably a mushroom hunting trip we took last October.
Yeah, and it was deer.
Yeah. What was exciting about that is not only did we find it, we actually got to get really close to the deer and see the deer actually poop. And you know, that's pretty rare opportunity
for a wildlife tracker. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's funny. Oh, guess we should talk a little bit about what we've been up to. So Albany Mountain Homestead, just ask where we are located. We're in unincorporated King County in Washington State. So foothills of the Cascade Mountains.
We're about
Pacific Northwest.
an hour east of Seattle. Yep. So we're out in the country in a place called the Snoqualmie Valley. Yeah. Garden Zone 8B for those of you who are paying attention.
Yeah. And it looks like Tracy asked how the large planters are doing. And Tracy, I'm assuming you mean, are you meaning the main garden and the containers that we have out there?
Our stock tanks.
Stock tanks. Do you want to talk about how that's going?
Yeah, so they are doing great. We've had a really cold, wet spring here in the Pacific Northwest. And so, yep, our galvanized steel tanks. So it's been great for things like radishes and spinach and lettuce. It hasn't been so great for things like tomatoes and squash, although this week we're now hitting our heat wave, which heat wave for us is in the 90s. And we're hoping it'll be good for some of those plants. But the tanks are doing really well. We did run into an issue, which is watering.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, just there's a lot of watering to do, and with full-time jobs, it's hard to make the time to get in the exercise that we need and to get out and water the garden a couple times a day. So we decided to put in a drip irrigation system, and it's mostly in. And
the mostly part is the trick.
A couple of the parts that we used, we realized we need to change. Just our house has a little bit higher water pressure than standard, and so some of the joints that we used in connecting the different main line for the drip system, they tend to pop off with the higher water pressure. So we've gotten some locking joints that we'll hopefully be putting in this weekend, so that doesn't happen anymore. But we've had some exciting moments where we had set the drip timer and like getting ready for bed, and all of a sudden I hear Julie, she looks out the window, is like, there's a problem in the garden.
And there's just water shooting out of the main line, which is 3/4 inch, this high pressure. So it watered things in a way we didn't expect.
So we're running out in the garden with robes on, stop and getting sprayed. We're out there.
We live rural, but not rural enough to run outside naked.
Right.
Without giving our neighbors a show that we did not plan on.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna hopefully fix that problem this weekend and not have any more sprints to the garden right before bed.
But so far it's been working really well, except for a few little tweaks that we need to dial in.
Exactly. I think once we secure those, we're going to be golden. So
yeah, and drip irrigation is a project that I think, like many, seems really intimidating and complicated if you haven't done it before. But once you kind of get in there and give it a try, it's pretty easy to figure out. We did drip irrigation in the last rental house that we were in. It was in ground in the city. It was a pretty small space. This place, our tanks are raised, and so we had to do a little bit of extra finagling, and we put in a bigger main line, a high pressure, because we have plans to expand our garden. We wanted to get enough water out there. So it's been a little dialing in, but it's going good.
Coming along. So.
How long is our winter and how cold do you get here? We moved south to get away from Michigan winters, landed in Texas for 2 years before we settled in Arkansas. Wow, you must have experienced a lot of really interesting gardening zones.
Yeah, a lot of variation there.
Yeah, we lived in the greater Seattle area for most of the last 20 years, which is really close to Puget Sound. And that's a big, like, inland saltwater body that makes a maritime climate. We moved out to the mountains where it's a little different. So I would say in general, the coldest it gets around here is in the teens. And
Yeah.
I mean, you probably have a really good sense of this with we have our own weather station too.
Yeah, it drops into the teens, and not very often, but sometimes we'll get a cold snap in the winter. The cold snaps usually only last a week or two. Some winters it surprises us, but we have very wet winters, and it's usually high 30s to low 50s even throughout the winter, and a lot of rain. And then, like I say, every once in a while a cold snap sneaks up on us, but we can usually have decent sun through end of September, and sometimes well into October. Then the rains come, and they usually stick around until April, May.
Yeah.
And then interspersed with the cold snaps. So we can garden year round if we cover the garden or use the greenhouse. Then we just have to take extra care when the temperatures do drop below freezing, which fortunately is rare, or when we get 2 feet of snow overnight, which sometimes happens and threatens to crush the covered beds in the gardens.
Yeah, and when Kevin says covered beds, you may have seen one of our YouTube videos. It's called Gardening in the Off Season. And in our galvanized tanks, we put these PVC pipes so that we can bend PVC and create kind of a hoop house with agricultural cloth or plastic. So our winters are, like Kevin said, kind of borderline, so we can grow things in that situation year round. It is really tricky for a lot of the warm, hot season crops. So, a lot of people get into gardening for peppers and tomatoes and squash, and those things have a pretty narrow window for us.
Absolutely.
But the benefit is that we can grow other things year round. And since we really like salad, it works out okay for us.
Yeah, we eat a lot of salad.
And when Kevin mentioned greenhouse, if you haven't seen, we also have a YouTube video about that. We dream of having a really nice big greenhouse, but this year having to put new siding and a new roof on our house meant that that's farther off. And we ended up doing something that I swear we would never do.
Yeah, we bought the little cheap kit greenhouse.
And I'm glad we did.
Yeah, it works.
It works.
But it's not our dream greenhouse by any means.
No, but we're doing what we can with what we've got.
Yep.
So I would love to know what Arkansas is like. If you want to just give us a quick rundown, what is your gardening season like? And then Tracy asked if suggestions for gardening in Seattle. Any chance of doing vegetables, or would planters of herbs be my best bet? I have early morning to noon sun. That's great. If that's the sun you have, that's the best. My recommendation for gardening in a balcony or a smaller space is to start with herbs and salads. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the easiest to grow in a small space for sure, and get the most return for the space, I think.
Yeah, and return for the space is really key. There's some things that you might be able to grow, like carrots or beets. There's some seeds that are just designed for those smaller containers, but they have a really long growing period. And so what I like about the herbs and the salad are you can get them a pretty good rotation going, and you can get a lot of food out of a small space. And they also are a really good trade-off for the money. Buying those little tiny packets of fresh herbs at the store are really expensive. And then you have all that plastic. Whereas, you can spend a couple bucks on seeds, put them in some potting soil, and for things like parsley, you maybe plant it once and that might last you for a couple of years of snipping. Or with lettuce, you can get cut and come again, which is where you cut kind of high on the crop and it'll just keep growing on its own.
And it's just amazing how much better those herbs and that salad will taste coming straight from the garden to your plate rather than, on a truck to the store to your home. There really is a difference in quality that you'll notice.
Yeah. At the same time, if those are things you don't like to eat, it might be worth it to explore some other option. We really love Territorial Seed Company because they are out of the Pacific Northwest, so they do a lot of regional seeds, and they have a lot of really good seeds that are specifically designed for containers. So that's a good place to explore. Can you read it?
Albany Mountain Homestead also said an indeterminate tomatoes for a balcony garden. And that's, very good suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you not familiar with determinate versus indeterminate, the determinate tomatoes, I always get confused. One of them will continue growing really tall and forever and can get really big and overwhelming. So if you've seen some of our videos where we have these monster tomatoes on our patio, those are them.
The house, practically.
But then there's other tomato plants that grow in a compact size, and that compact size, can just go in like a little hoop or structure, and that's really ideal for a patio. Again, in the Pacific Northwest, tomatoes are really tricky. They're worth giving a try, but it can be hit or miss. Like this year with the way the season's been, I'm not sure we're going to actually get any, even though I've got 8 plants out there.
Yeah, they like the heat so much. It's hard when it's not warm. As Albany Mountain, it looks like you have like you're saying, a very similar zone to ours here. That's interesting.
Yeah, and you're welcome for the seed suggestion. Good that you love salad. It's amazing what if, like Kevin said, the fresh taste of a fresh salad can be. And tomatoes or geranium tomatoes. Ooh, those sound like fun varieties.
Yeah, I don't think we've grown those.
We are not experts at tomatoes. And this is one of the fun things about homesteading that I feel like doesn't get talked about a lot, is we really focus on this idea of self-sustainability, but really we all have different gifts and we can use our different gifts to help each other. So like we're super good at worm bins, and our worms, they reproduce like crazy. I can't get them to stop. We have a friend who's really good at growing tomato starts, so we will trade with her or other people around that. The reality for us too is that we homestead with chronic illness, and you may have just heard the beep and noticed Kevin looking at something. It's not his drug dealer beeper.
It's my insulin pump is making some noise right now, saying I have high blood sugar. So we had lunch a little bit ago, and apparently I didn't dose quite correctly, so I just adjusted that.
Yeah, so part of Kevin's autoimmune health challenges is adult onset type 1 diabetes, and that's something that we are always navigating.
Yeah, fighting highs or lows. Actually, usually lows, though, with homesteading because it's so active. But we're doing okay.
We are doing okay.
If I look a little red right now, it's blood sugar's a little high.
Yeah, we haven't started drinking whiskey yet today.
No, just water.
So if you have questions for us, you can drop them in the chat. Albany Mountain says, in Michigan, my gardens were decorative and I had 1 dwarf apple and grew a couple of tomatoes. Yeah, so our first garden 20 years ago was about the size of a bathtub.
Right.
I thought I could buy seeds at the grocery store and put them in the dusty dirt and have something grow. Of course, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But wherever you are, just trying something and seeing how it goes. And with gardening, there's always more learning to be done. Cervical and spine surgeries, and you understand the limitations. Thank you. Yeah, I've had 7 surgeries in 7 years. This is the big test. The last one we're hoping fixed some issues. And so far, so good this season. We're going to be trying to go on a hike later this week, which will be a big test. But, it's absolutely possible.
Yep. And oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Oh, you found us from,
Jill Winger's podcast.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you found us.
Me
and I'm
too.
so glad that you're out there homesteading, even with the challenges you're experiencing.
Yeah.
You know, I think those of us who have faced real challenges like that and hardship and trauma really have learned how to savor life
Absolutely.
despite that. And we were really excited to be contacted by Jill. Like if you saw that, you know that I got to just blob about how much I love her and how when we first started going this direction, we didn't know anybody really, except for a couple people who were doing it. A lot of people around us thought, like, really? You're going to go from cancer to country living? That doesn't make sense to me. But she was one of the first people we found online who made us feel like it could be possible, even if you didn't grow up in a homesteading family. So it was just a really lovely treat to have that come full circle and have her team contact us to do that podcast.
It's great.
Yeah. And being blessed with a husband who does the heavy lifting, plant and weed and harvest. It's good to divide those skills. Kevin does the heavy lifting for me too, even though sometimes I don't let him.
I do the heavy lifting till my blood sugar drops, and then I eat something and sit down for a little while.
Yep. So do you want to talk about some of the things that we've been up to that are public and aren't quite yet?
Yeah. Well, one thing you may have seen, we just posted our video on some predator-proof fencing that we made with our good friend Nicholas. If you have, a garden to protect or livestock to protect, it's a great design. Like the key to it is the hot wires and how they're set up. Like we built a very specific fence with off-the-shelf parts that anybody can usually build without a lot of extra help, but the design can be applied to whatever type of fencing you're putting in, and the diagram for that is on our website. The video about it is available now. We posted it on YouTube. Had a lot of fun making the video, and hope it will help folks reduce conflict with wildlife. Speaking of wildlife, here on our own homestead, in the past month, we've been seeing coyote pups. There were 3 of them popping out of the woods periodically. We did have our back patio, we fenced for deer. We don't have the design that Nicholas and us put together in that video, because this is just temporary fencing, patio garden. Didn't think we'd have a problem with anything other than deer and rabbits, but one of the little coyote pups actually chewed a very small hole in the fence and came in and had a very good strawberry feast. So that's been remedied, and the fence is now secured, and well, there's no more strawberries anyway, so I think the pup has moved on.
But the thing with wildlife is they're always our teachers. And just when we think we've got things figured out, they'll show us a new thing we need to address. So chewing through the fence was a new one. But yes, they have grown up and moved on, and we don't really see them like we did. And they did actually take care of all of our moles.
Yes, they did.
Before they got to the strawberries. So
yeah,
it was a good exchange. Albany Mountain says that he's also newly diagnosed diabetic, so he'll be more challenged on eating better and sustaining food.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
I can relate to that. As Julie mentioned, like when I was diagnosed, we took a close look at what we were eating and started talking about producing more of our own food and eating, healthier and more sustainably. And the homesteading has really helped, even though I have high blood sugar right now. It's actually a fairly rare thing. I can stay pretty even, throughout the day, doing the work. Like I can take less insulin, go outside, work hard to work the blood sugar off instead of relying on the insulin. And if I start to drop low, we have some delicious food here I can eat to
yeah, and we
take care of that. So I can sympathize and empathize with being newly diagnosed. I was diagnosed in 2010, and which was kind of a shock. It kind of came out of the blue. So it's scary at first, but once you sort of get a handle on things, figure out, like keep really good track of how what you eat affects your blood sugar. Like every bit of food, every type of food, you'll see patterns in it, and it'll help you. Once you identify those patterns, it will help you to make good choices about each meal. But I know for me, it's going to be a lifelong process. So anyway, I'm sorry that you're dealing with it, but I can attest that as scary as it is in the beginning, it does get better. So,
Yeah, and I didn't mean to try to interrupt you there, but I was going to
no,
say,
that's-
it sounds like he's a picky eater, which can be tough. I have developed this recipe that we find that's really good for Kevin that I call carrot cake power bars. You can find it on our website. That's good for when he drops low or is going to be
Yeah.
doing an activity like mowing the lawn or something that's going to be a heavier output that might bring him low. That's a
It's-
healthy recipe.
Yeah, it's tasty. It also it doesn't spike your blood sugar. So you eat it an hour or so before you're going to be active. Like I feel like it just keeps me nice and even. Whereas some things you eat, your blood sugar will immediately skyrocket. This doesn't have that effect. It's one of my favorite snacks now. So
Yeah.
um,
So if you're just joining us, welcome. I'm Julie.
and I'm Kevin.
And we are the people behind Wild Homestead Living. We're coming to you live from our homestead in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State. We're just about an hour east of Seattle on a couple of acres. We moved here after Kevin's diagnosis with autoimmune issues and me surviving breast cancer. Been here for about 4 years, and we're just glad that everybody's with us today. If you're just joining us, you can drop in the chat where you're joining us from. We would love to know. And we talked a little bit about some of the projects we've done recently, what's happening here, and then we've had a couple other projects we've been working on that we sort of alluded to on social media, but we could talk a little bit more about the field trips we've done and the field trip we're going to be doing.
Yep. Yeah. So we have, I'll talk about the ones that we have done. We've, the last couple weekends, we took field trips to 2 different homesteads. First was our friends, Peter and Mary's, had a nice sit down interview with them and then took a tour of the homestead. There was some really great ideas there for everything from, managing animals on the homestead to coexisting with wildlife. And then the following weekend, we went to Hawthorne Farm. Our friend Alexia, same thing, had a sit-down interview and then a tour of that farm. Just trying to, our motto is there is no one right way to homestead, only a way that's right for you. So we thought it would be fun to visit these different homesteads and just show how different people are doing their thing. And it helps us learn a lot, to learn some new ideas, and we're hoping it'll help everyone else that watches learn some new ideas as well.
Yeah, last summer we had the chance to go to our friends Jason and Carrie, who have Alderley Farm and Wilderness School. So you can check that. There's a couple installments of that video where they're teaching wilderness survival skills and doing a permaculture farm, which is sort of like the ultimate mega, facility. And what's cool about Alexia's place at Hawthorne Farm that we're going to be doing a video on soon that we got to record recently is that she is farming in the suburbs. So in Woodinville, Washington, it's like one of the suburbs of Seattle, and you would never really guess that you might have a few acre farm down a long driveway with goats and ponies, but it's possible.
Yep.
And Peter and Mary's is really fun because they're the people who, when I was in my 20s, I sort of like wanted to grow up to be just like them. They're about 30 years older than us, and they're still doing it, and they've been on their property really long term. So you may have heard or maybe even felt that homesteading can be really exciting at first, but then a lot of people get out of it because it's just too much. But seeing them and having, done this for many decades and now still homesteading in their golden years is really inspiring. So we're excited to share those things with you soon.
Plus, we got to play with their goats.
We would love to have our own goats, but with us both working full time off the homestead, we've made the decision that it's probably not realistic right now at this time for us to be able to do right by them.
Yeah. Someday.
So we live vicariously through other people's goats.
Exactly.
And the upcoming field trip that I alluded to was we're going to be going on a hike later this week. Some of you may have come to us through a project we had before called Exploring History in Your Hiking Boots, where we were out there sharing hikes in nature and the history of places that we would discover. So we're super into history, and in our region, there's a lot of really interesting mining history that's been lost. And we found some really amazing hard rock mines miles from any trail that have been lost to history. Unfortunately, we had to take down the website that we'd created where we were giving people driving and hiking directions because it got a little too popular and people were damaging sites.
Yeah.
But we're going to bring you along on a trip here soon, next weekend when we go on a hike. And like I said, this will be my first hike since hopefully my last 7 years of 7 surgeries. I'm going to put on a backpack and see how it works. But so far, all signs point to that's going to go well.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not gonna do like the epic 20-mile hike, that we used to do back into the middle of nowhere to a mine, but we'll go somewhere very scenic that we know about. And it's going to be a super hot day, so we might just hang out by a beautiful waterfall, but we'll see.
We'll see. We'll be sure to keep you posted.
Yeah.
Albany Mountain says that I'm thinking Rain County is up near you. I'm not familiar with that county. We're in King County, and just across the mountains from us is Kittitas County. Skagit County is to the north of us. That's probably the one that most people are the most familiar with us with farming in our region.
Or Rain Country.
Rain Country. Yeah. Many try to jump in and do all things and end up burned out. Yep, boy, that is so true. We started with a small garden and 10 laying hens and then grew to rabbits and a bigger garden. That is such a beautiful example. We have watched people move into our area after us and try to do everything all at once and then just stop doing anything because it's overwhelming. So I think you've really dialed in that starting small and slowly building over time is absolutely the way to go.
And that's exactly what we're doing as well. So.
Yeah. The Channel Rain Country. I'm not familiar with that. I'm going to write that down so that I don't forget. Yeah. So what else has been going on that we wanted to talk about? The crow.
Oh, the crow.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say we are not going to run out of salad anytime soon.
We are not going to run out of salad. There's this thing, like people say, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. For me, I go out there and the garden doesn't seem that big until I bring the bowl out and I try to fill it, and then I try to bring it in and fit it in the fridge, and it doesn't really work. So we kind of overplant. I don't know if you could even say overplanted the salad, because everybody around us gets lots of salad too.
This is true. So, but the crow, you were gonna.
Yeah. So she's very knowledgeable on many things natural gardening. We'll like her. Thanks for the tip. So like I mentioned, and like some of you know from knowing us for a long time, Kevin and I met in a wildlife rehabilitation hospital where we were both working. And we both have long histories from childhood of trying to rescue and raise wild animals. Mm-hmm. Didn't go real well during our childhoods when we didn't know what we were doing. Poor animals.
Sorry.
But these days we drive around with rescue kits in the back of our cars because that's just who we are. It's part of what we do in the world, and animals seem to find their way to us. So the other night I was driving home from work. I'm a park ranger in the Cascade Mountains, and I drive this long rural commute. And I just looked over on the side as I was driving down through this tiny town. I just saw this little crow hunkered down in a way that I know means I don't feel good, like something is wrong. So I pulled over. I picked her up. You can see a picture on social media of her tucked under my arm. Now, with
Mhm.
young crows, just as a side note, sometimes they don't need help. Just like baby deer, we probably all know here, the little spotted fawns, often their mamas will leave them hidden safely during the day and come back and check on them. Um, some similar thing with crows, they don't have spots, but they get really bright blue eyes and these like pink edges of their mouths called gate flanges. There's a normal part of their time where they're on the ground, but this little baby had nobody in the trees watching out for her, and she just seemed a little bit sickly. I did a quick exam. I couldn't find an injury, but I took her home. And then the next morning, I took her to our old work,
Yeah.
Paws Wildlife Center, where she was in the capable hands and licensed hands to heal her. So hopefully she has a second chance. It's not a way I was planning on spending my time between work shifts, but
She
what we
needed you.
do.
Yep. She's lucky you found her.
Yeah, that's probably been our most exciting moment. Tracy's asking if we have any new favorite recipes. Well, yes, we actually have a few of them.
Right.
So this fun side thing we've
Uh-huh.
discovered by going to other homesteads is we get new recipes. So I'm going to try to publish one recipe a month, and pretty easy, accessible recipes. When we were at the Holt homestead, they gave us some rhubarb and told us about a really good rhubarb barbecue sauce recipe. And so I've been testing that out, and I'm going to share that in the next month or so. Not only because it's delicious, it's a great way to use rhubarb, but when we were at the grocery store last week, bottles of barbecue sauce right now are $8.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
like, we're willing to pay good money for good food, but that just seemed crazy. So I'm really excited about this tasty, affordable recipe to share with you. And then when we were at Alexia's at Hawthorne Farm, she not only told us about a good recipe, but she actually made it for us.
Yeah.
And we're going to share it with you on video. So that's going to be really cool. And the recipe is a goat cheese olive spread for crackers. I would love, though, if you all have any requests for recipes that you'd like, or any topics you'd like us to cover. Like, please let us know. We want to make sure that we're creating content that you find valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, welcome. We'd love for you to drop in the chat where you are joining us from. We're in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, just about an hour east of Seattle.
All right. Just trying to think if there's anything we haven't covered.
Yeah.
I noticed Albany Mountain said they've helped some wild animals in the past as well get back to the wild. That's great.
Yeah. We really truly believe that you can homestead anywhere you are, in a high-rise apartment or on 100 acres. But we do love living in the wild, rural places.
Yeah.
And that allows us access in close proximity to go into the mountains and hike, to be in nature. And that means we just are surrounded by a lot of animals, which we love, but it also means we find more in need. And so we're happy to know there are other people who are looking out there for them too. It's not always possible and safe to rescue them, but it's a good thing when you can do it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Loving all things cooking and nature. You are in good company.
Can relate.
Yep. Same here. And those recipes were delicious. It's actually pretty hard to focus on Alexia making her goat cheese recipe, because we got to go pick the garlic for it next to her goats who made the goat milk for the cheese that she put in it, and just watching her, I wanted to just eat it all. She did send some home with us, which we were very happy about. So yeah, do you have any questions for us while we're here during this time? Any special requests you'd like us to cover over the next season? Let us know, and you can drop them in the comments. What else do we have coming up here?
I think that covers pretty much what's on our agenda. I mean, there's other long-term stuff like our remodel of the guest room upstairs that we'll get back to eventually. One of the earlier videos that we put up starting that. And then life takes you different directions sometimes.
Yeah. In particular, I ended up needing a couple more surgeries than we planned. So I needed to actually be on bed rest in that room instead of working on construction. But we're going to be using a lime wash paint that I bought from Europe. And lots of people ask us, like, when are you going to do it? How does it work? I promise we're going to be doing it. We're hoping to get it done by October so Kevin's family can come visit us and enjoy
Right.
that room being done. But
And
I don't know if we should make any promises at this point.
We really want to see how that lime wash works too.
Yes, we do.
It'll be a first for us. So let's see.
Plant and mushroom identification is something I'm wanting to dive into more. That's great. Thank you for letting us know. Those are things we'd absolutely love to cover. We mushroom hunt every fall. Around here, the fall is the season. Some other places like Kevin's from Iowa, it's spring, but we'll cover that soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Programs. Let's see. Do you have any suggestions for programs for kids and young gardeners?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll have to think about that one. Yeah. We'll definitely stay tuned for that one. And then any preventive maintenance suggestions for extended periods of high temperatures. Yeah. Anderson was down with neck pain for nearly 2 weeks. Things just have to wait sometimes. Yep. There's a lot of prioritizing. And then there's the physical healing. And then there's also, for us, sustainability really also means financially. And usually surgeries or downtime come with big bills or with less money coming in. So sometimes there's a recovery period there. I find that
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's never a time that becomes idle. You know, those are times that we can research things, we can watch YouTube channels, we can plan. I think I've planned the master plan for this property at least a dozen times now.
Yeah.
What about high temperatures? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, our solution was to put in the drip irrigation to make sure everything was well watered, but it got a little more well watered than we expected.
We had the explosion from the high pressure, for those of you who may have missed that earlier story.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any?
Yeah, a couple things. We haven't done this, but we have our friend that I mentioned earlier, who's the amazing gifted tomato grower. She actually buys kids' parasols or umbrellas and stakes them out in her garden as temporary shade to just protect plants that maybe need a little extra support. And we have a kiddie pool, you may have seen in some of our videos, that we put out and we fill it with water, as well as a bird bath for extra water for the wildlife in the area. And we last year tried putting our trail cam up just to see, and found that animals do use it, especially the crows and the deer.
Yeah, they do. Especially the crows. They love it.
They do. Let's see.
Drought.
Kids garden, plant zinnia. They grow fast and flowers last a long time in a vase. Peas are definitely fun. Those are great ideas. Thank you so much. This is actually exactly what we were hoping for with doing live homestead hangouts, instead of just us telling you what we're doing, is that we can all help each other. And that's really the kind of community that we want to grow, is a place that's safe to ask questions and learn, and that there isn't judgment, that we can just support each other in living this way, neighbor to neighbor, whether we're across the street or across the planet. You're in a big drought year in Arkansas. It rained 2 times in the last month, nearly 30 days apart. Wow. I wish that we could share with you, because we've had way, way too much rain. Yeah.
Yeah, it has been a wet year for sure. But today is the opposite. It's actually getting pretty warm in here right now.
Yeah.
We're moving into 80 and 90 degree temperatures this week. So
that's what we're due for, probably for a whole week here, which gets tricky. So it's a little unfortunate. This is the time of year we get excited about finally being able to get out and do work. But we've found, for us, especially for me, I don't do well in the really strong heat. So when we put in our garden fence, the fence that's around our stock tank garden, it was like this. And one of the posts got really crooked because my brain was just not working well. So this is a time when we lay a little bit lower than maybe we'd hope. It's a good time to sit on the front porch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did early this morning scrub the grill really well.
have hello from
Ohio.
Yeah, Southwest Ohio.
Yeah, welcome. We're so
Welcome.
glad to have you here. What is your season like? We're talking about some of us are experiencing drought, some of us are experiencing too much rain. I have not spent a lot of time in Ohio, so I'd love if you want to tell us what it's like for you there right now. And what are challenges to gardens with wet weather? So that's a great question. Some of the things we experience are a lot of like leaf molds. Our squashes and tomatoes can kind of get this mold that's really difficult to manage.
Yeah.
Some plants, like our eggplant, they just curled up and died in too much water. Even some of our potatoes have been a little bit iffy.
They have been. And our stock tank raised beds, we have to make sure that we open up the plug on the bottom if we're getting a lot of rain, or it'll just drown the beds. Like, fill it up and drown them.
Yeah. So our YouTube video that went viral was one that was one of the first ones we did on my shaky iPhone, just about our stock tank garden. A lot of people say, well, why didn't we drill holes in the bottom of our stock tanks? And I wanted to try something different for a couple reasons. I've heard that stock tanks rust a lot quicker if you break through that barrier. And they've got a little hole on the side that drains. So what we did in the bottom of our tanks was we put about this much gravel, maybe like 6 inches of gravel, and then some landscaping cloth. And then we can open or close the tanks. So in this time of year, we close them and then we keep as much water in there as possible. And through evapotranspiration, it comes up. So that's like where the water just comes to the surface. During the really wet season, we want them to be open and they drain more, but sometimes we
forget. Yeah. The plants tell us when we forget.
Yeah.
Not too often though, luckily.
Yeah, most of the time we're doing all right with that.
Yeah.
How did we garden during last year's heat dome? Lots and lots of watering. So we didn't originally plan drip irrigation because I love to hand water, but oh man, we were out there watering a lot.
Yeah.
Working early mornings to 11 or 12 and then out again in the evening.
That's a good strategy to avoid the heat of the day for sure.
Yeah.
And then looks like Lydia from Ohio, it's hot and drier than normal, but doesn't know if it counts as a drought. Lots of pest bugs. Interesting. What specific pests? Just curious.
And Tracy has friends in Florida who want to plant in the galvanized tanks. And is there a problem regulating the heat in them? That's a really good question. So I did a lot of testing our first year. Last year it was a whole year. Last year was our first spring. We ended up not being, I thought I was going to be more focused on the temperature. We ended up accidentally poisoning our garden with herbicides through compost and mulch. And so we ended up focusing much more on those problems than the heat. We did do some monitoring of the temperature. They do get warm. We did not find that they got exceedingly hot. Nothing dangerous, but a really thick layer of mulch will help to keep that temperature calm. We at this time are not recommending straw as a mulch because there's just too much contamination happening in our country with these broadleaf herbicides. Some of the things that we are finding we like are, if you grew peas in the spring, you get a lot of these vines. When you cut them down, you can put them on the garden.
Yep.
What else? Cardboard, coconut coir, either the chunky or the fine kind. And then I also have been experimenting with pet beddings that are made out of hemp shafts. So I can't quite remember the name right now, but that's something that I've been trying because none of these crops that I've mentioned are commonly, these herbicides are commonly being used on them. So that's one thing. Oh, squash bugs. Have we ever had to deal with squash bugs?
We haven't, fortunately. Yeah.
I've heard they're awful.
Yeah.
We have bigger problems with slugs.
And Albany Mountain recommends for squash and tomatoes, prune overlapping leaves for more ventilation. That would help reduce fungus and things on them for sure.
Yep. And then we always pull the leaves that are touching the ground. So once they start getting going, nothing that's touching the ground or the pot really helps too.
Yep. And Tracy asked if we elevate the galvanized tanks, and we didn't elevate them. We just put them on a bed of gravel, though.
Yeah.
The whole main garden with the tanks is set on a bed of gravel. It helps. The slugs don't like to go across the gravel, and if they do make it across the gravel and start going up the tank, they hit a band of copper tape that we put around the outside of the tank, and that usually stops them if the gravel doesn't. So, but they sit right at ground level on that gravel.
Yeah. Stay tuned. We might have some more evidence to share about raising them. Our friend Nicholas, who you saw in the fencing video, is 6'6", and even a 4-foot bed is painful for him to bend over into. So he's contemplating getting some tanks and then elevating them. So if he does it, we'll be able to tell you how that goes. And Albany Mountain says that they've used mostly pet bedding, straw, and tree mulch. And we've heard a lot of people, at least in our area, I think maybe in other areas, they have something called like chip drop, where you, for a low cost or free, you can get tree chips brought in. I have a colleague who did that, and she ruined her entire blueberry crop because it turns out there was like a locust or a black walnut. There's some kind of tree that got chipped into the mix that ended up just wreaking havoc. So we've been a little bit shy about using tree mulch that is coming in from other places. If we end up having to chip some of our own trees, we might use them then.
Yeah, we also have a lot of invasive plants around that can take over really quickly. And sometimes if people are clearing an area, they're, putting the trees to the chipper, but they might also have, either intentionally or accidentally, like some stalks from knotweed or something that is a really invasive plant. So we've been hesitant. I'm in a constant battle with blackberries and knotweed on the property. I think I'm winning.
I think you are too.
Because you don't see a lot of it these days, but I'm trying to restore a lot of the native plants in our wildlife areas, and that meant removing some of the non-native plants that have taken over. So Albany Mountain mentions eggshells to deter slugs. I'm assuming the crushed up eggshells, they probably don't like the sharp edges on that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I've heard of like powdering them in either a line or up on top of your tanks.
I like that.
Yeah. We put most of our shells in our worm bin.
Yep.
But that would be a great solution too. So if you're just joining us, welcome. We'd love for you to drop in the comments where you're joining us from or your garden zone. We are in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, just about an hour east of Seattle. Chip drop never happened for us until electric company mulched trees. Yeah, that's a great solution. I've wondered when I see people, maybe our neighbors, I feel like I think maybe they would be pretty good with theirs if they would bring their chips here, but we haven't had that chance yet.
Nah, not so far.
Yeah. We are hopefully, just as time allows, going to be doing a longer video about how we ended up healing our poisoned garden. But one of the things we discovered was we'd shied away from our municipal composter because we'd heard some mixed things, but we ended up finding that they were guaranteeing that they heated their compost high enough to break down any herbicides that could be there. So we've tried using them now and feel like that's going to be a good source.
Yeah, it seems like we've had good success so far using that.
Yeah.
Couple new comments. Lydia from Ohio says, my 15-year-old son loves going and finding bugs on plants at night, and he gets excited picking off the big slugs. I was probably much like your son when I was his age. Sounds like something I still enjoy. And Tracy asks if we hold rainwater on our homestead. We don't have a rain capture system currently. We're going to. In the past, like when we lived at a rental house in West Seattle and had a garden in the front yard, I put in a couple rain barrels and we watered the garden from those. We did the first step in getting a rain catchment system on this property this year, and that's replacing the asphalt shingle roof with a metal roof. But in the not too distant future, we'll be figuring out what kind of tanks we want and installing that. So we're looking forward to that, but I'm sure we'll make a video about that as well.
Yeah, that is a big dream of mine for sure. Well, I'm glad you were with us, Albany Mountain. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll look forward to getting updates on how things go on your homestead and with your health. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions for us today? You're welcome to just drop them in the chat if you do. And if you don't today and you do come up with questions that you think of, you're also always welcome to drop us a line through our website, which is wildhomesteadliving.com, or find us on any of the social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We were very reluctant to join TikTok, but then we noticed a lot of people were joining us from there, so we hopped on the bandwagon. Yeah, well, if nobody else has anything for us, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot today, and just thankful that y'all were here and joined us. We'll do more of these in the future. So hopefully, if you have other questions, Julie, like she said, drop us a line. We can maybe cover them in future videos or in future Hangouts. Or you can come to the future lives with your questions. We'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, and if there's anything you'd like us to cover in our longer content, like our videos, or any particular people you'd like us to tour or meet, you're also welcome to let us know that too. We want to make sure that we are creating content that you find valuable.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you too, Tracy.
Yeah.
All right.
So should we leave them with our favorite thing?
With our saying or with our all right, well, thank you so much for joining us, and remember, there is no one right way to homestead,
only the way that's right for you.
We'll see you next time.